Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I really appreciate all the support you guys have shown me in the channel. Today is day 79 since Nancy Guthrie vanished, so it has now been almost 80 days since this 84-year-old woman literally just disappeared from her home in Tucson, Arizona. Some new information in this episode I'm getting into. First of all, remember the two ransom notes that came early on that went to the TV stations in Arizona? Those are the notes that we believe Savannah Guthrie was referencing when she said that she thought two of the notes were real and legitimate. Well, there was a Bitcoin account, and we've got some new information about a transaction in that Bitcoin account early on, and a note in the Bitcoin account specifically that seems like it's either from the FBI or from the Guthrie family. So I'm going to tell you exactly what we know, the new information about that coming up. Also, I'm talking to retired FBI agent Steve Moore, good friend of the show. You guys have seen him many times. But specifically, I'm asking him about what some of these profilers have told me recently. You know, I've spoken to several retired FBI profilers who have come up with a profile of who they believe is responsible for the Nancy Guthrie abduction based on the information that they have. And Steve is going to explain how the agents on the ground actually investigating the case use the information from the profilers, and they use the information to help them investigate. How exactly does that work, though? And Steve is the perfect person because he has had investigations where he's used profilers before. I also wanted to see what he thought about some of what they're telling me, like the fact that they believe the person responsible is someone who knew Nancy Guthrie. What does he think about that? Plus some of these other details that they had, that it may have been retribution. I'm curious what Steve thinks because, again, he was one of the agents who was actually working the cases like this on the ground. So I'm going to talk to Steve and get into all of it coming up in this episode of Brian Enton Invest.
It's been 79 days since 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie vanished from her home in Tucson, Arizona. Nearly 80 days, and still no answers. No confirmed sightings, no solid leads. Just silence, and a trail of clues that only seem to raise more questions. Early in the case, two ransom notes were sent to local TV stations. At the time, they were taken seriously. Serious enough that even those close to the case believed at least some of them could be legitimate. That alone shifted everything, because now this wasn't just a disappearance. It looked like a possible abduction. But then came something even stranger. Investigators discovered a Bitcoin wallet tied to those ransom messages. And on February 10th, there was activity, a small deposit, and a message: "We are ready to talk. Contact us." Then, nothing. No follow-up, no response that the public could see. Just one message, sitting there like a door that was opened, but never walked through. If you think that sounds like a real negotiation attempt or something staged, let me know in the comments. I read all of them. According to a retired FBI agent, if that message came from authorities, it wasn't desperation. It was strategy. In cases like this, you don't rush. You don't show panic. Because the moment you do, you lose control. Instead, you signal that you're willing to talk, but only on terms that don't hand all the power to whoever is behind it. And that's where things start to fall apart. Because whoever sent those ransom notes never proves Nancy was alive. No proof of life, no private communication. Everything was pushed through the media, TV stations, public channels. That's not how real kidnappers usually operate when they want money. So now investigators are left asking a difficult question. Was this ever a real ransom situation at all? As the days passed, criminal profilers began to weigh in, and their conclusion points in a very different direction. They believe the person responsible may not be a stranger, but someone Nancy knew. Not necessarily family, not even a close friend. Just someone who had access. Someone who crossed paths with her at some point in her life. And that changes everything. Because now the focus isn't just on what happened that day, it's on the past. Years of it, financial records, old contacts, anyone who had a reason or even just an opportunity. One profiler even described the suspect as unafraid, someone bold, someone confident enough to take risks. And sometimes that kind of confidence is exactly what leads to mistakes. If you're following this case and want more updates like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Midnight Casefiles. It really helps the channel grow and keeps these stories coming. Right now, the hardest part of this case is the uncertainty. The family is still holding on to hope, because as long as there's even the smallest chance, you don't give up. But from an investigative standpoint, there are growing doubts. Doubts about the ransom, doubts about whether there was ever a real negotiation, and doubts about whether Nancy Guthrie is still alive. And that's what makes this case so unsettling. Because somewhere between that single Bitcoin message and the silence that followed, the truth is still out there. And someone knows exactly what happened. The question is, how long can they keep it hidden?
Steve, it's nice to see you. Thank you
Good to see you.
for joining me. I wanted to ask you some questions about some of this new information that's come out in the Nancy Guthrie investigation and some of the information that I've learned from some of the profilers that I talked to. And I wanted to see, like, as an agent, how you would put that into action actually with the investigation. But the first thing I wanted to ask you about is this new information coming from Brianna Whitney, who's a reporter with the CBS station in Phoenix. And that's one of the stations that received the first two ransom letters, the ones that we believe Savannah was referencing when she said that she thought two were real. And they're now divulging, the station, that when they looked back into the Bitcoin wallet, there was activity on February 10th, and there's been no activity since. So this would have been a couple of months ago, right when the letters first came out. And a small amount of money was put into the account, along with a note that said, "We are ready to talk. Contact us." And then there was a link for how to reach out to them. And there's no way to know for sure that that was the FBI or Savannah Guthrie, but it seems like it would kind of make sense. What do you think it means that they put that note in there, but it seems there was no response?
Well, I don't think we know that there was no response. There was no response that was visible to us. But I think that what that is the FBI saying, if it was the FBI, which makes sense, it's them saying, "Hey, we're in a negotiation here. This is not something where we're going to play the game where you just dictate terms to us, because it's that whole thing. Well, this is your only mother. You want her back, so you better meet our terms." And they would say, "We're your only victims, so if you don't get money from us, you don't get a dime." So we're both in this a zero-sum end game. I mean, this is big. And so there is wiggle room in negotiations. I can guarantee you, not every negotiation, but it really depends on how you do the negotiation. If you start, I know this sounds horrible, but it's like negotiating on a house or a car price, where if you come in and seem desperate, um, they will not budge. If they come in and seem truly, yes, we desperately want her back, but we're not going to set a precedent for future crimes, things like this, then you're forcing them into a negotiation. So I think what the FBI was telling them is, this is not a, you make a demand, we fulfill the demand. This is a negotiation, and this is going to be how it works.
Do you think that I mean, there was just that one entry from February 10th. Are you surprised they haven't tried again in terms of the FBI or the Guthries?
I I'm not, but again, I don't know what they know. Maybe I would be surprised. And in the FBI, um, in the same case, there's going to be a case agent, there's going to be a supervisor, there's going to be the supervisor's boss, the assistant special agent in charge, and then it goes all the way to the president in this case. So there could be, and there it would be astounding to me if there wasn't disagreement within them, within the team, on what the best strategy is going forward. And I've never been in a situation where there wasn't. Somebody saying they sound crazy, just pay them. What do we got to lose? Well, we've got to lose everything on this case and the victim and a precedent set for other cases. And so both sides come with strong arguments.
How much do you think they're consulting the family in the decision of whether to reach out again?
They're going to consult them before every significant move, and a lot of insignificant moves. But they won't be the Guthries won't be in the squad bay or the FBI conference room when they determine what their strategy recommendations are going to be. And certainly, I mean, think of it this way: it is not this relationship, but it has some similarities to a person who is on trial and they have an attorney. That attorney is an expert in the law, and they've seen this type of case so many times. But if the defendant wants to plead guilty, you can't talk him out of it. I mean, I'm sure you could try, but ultimately the decision is going to rest with the defendant. And in the FBI, it's very clear when you're going through training and when you start working these types of cases that you are working as an adjunct to the victims. You are trying to help them. At the same time, you are trying to capture the kidnapper. And so, it comes down to what's more important, capturing the kidnapper or getting the victim back. And that's where the rub comes in, usually. I used to argue that there's no difference. If you get the victim, you get the kidnapper. If you get the kidnapper, you get the victim if they're still alive.
I'm just thinking, I mean, from the Guthrie's perspective, there doesn't seem to be much going on right now from what we know from our sources behind the scenes. Like they're not making a ton of progress.
Right.
They don't seem to know who this person is who took Nancy or exactly what happened. And this may be the only real link that they have. If
Yep.
Savannah is saying we believe those two are real, um, like I just don't know that I would be able to resist if that was my mom being like, let's get back in that Bitcoin account. Like, even now, like you're up every night, like, screw it. Let's put more money in there and just see what happens.
Right. Right. Um, and I think some people would argue that puts you at a disadvantage. That if the person had um Nancy alive and wanted to return her, they would be the one contacting the FBI. Um, it doesn't. I don't think it's going to be. I mean, if if the kidnappers were amenable to discussing it, they would have bit on the first one.
Hmm.
And of course, it doesn't mean they didn't. See, the problem I have here is the kidnappers or the people demanding the ransom, we'll say that way, were negotiating in bad faith from day one. They would provide no proof of life. They didn't take Nancy's safety into consideration, according to physical evidence at the scene. Everything they did was in bad faith, and so it's like negotiating with Iran. You know, they can say that they're going to do something, but we sure don't trust them to do anything because they've never demonstrated anything, any bit of integrity or good faith in the investigation. One of the main issues that makes them seem like non-serious, um, is that they wanted the negotiations basically public. They wanted to go through TMZ. They wanted to go through TV networks. Um, if you wanted an intermediary to pass on stuff, you could choose people other than the media. They wanted this public.
I want to introduce you guys to the sponsor of today's episode, Incogni. Identity theft is such a big problem. It happened to a couple of my family members, and it was really, really awful. They had to close so many accounts, and it took a very, very long time to resolve, like literally months. And we're all at risk. I've been alerted by several banks that I've used that there was a data breach and that my data is out there. And criminals, they can get that personal information for scams, for stalking, harassment, and all sorts of other illegal activities. And that is where Incogni comes in. It is a personal data removal service, and it is so easy signing up online. It literally took me 1 minute. And look at this. This is my dashboard. It already shows hundreds of data brokers Incogni has contacted to make sure my data is not public. They also have a new custom removal feature on the unlimited and unlimited family plans. If you see a website with your personal info, you put it into Incogni's custom removal feature, and one of Incogni's privacy agents will take care of the rest for you. To check it all out, go to incogni.com/BrianEnton and use code BrianEnton for 60% off. Incogni helps wipe yourself from the internet. They can't harm you if they can't find you. Click the link below to claim your 60% off and get your personal data off the market. So maybe my response is more of an emotional response, thinking about like if it's your own mom versus, the FBI is actually thinking through whether this is legit.
Well, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. The family's going to want the mother back at all costs. And I get that. If it was my wife, I would want her back at all costs, and make your points and save your money on other cases. This is my family. So I totally get that. But at the same time, there would be an FBI agent coming to them privately and saying, based on everything we know, we don't think that Nancy's there to recover anymore.
Mm.
And so if you or they would say the chances of her being there to recover are infinitely small, and the people are not negotiating in good faith if they are the actual kidnappers. And so we don't think that there is value in pursuing this this way of getting her back, meaning giving them money.
Yeah, interesting. I've spoken to a couple of profilers over the last week that I wanted to get your take on some of their theories and how, as an agent, you would put them into practice with the actual investigation. Dr. Gary Bricado, and this was really interesting because he based his whole theory off of statistics, like,
Okay,
actual statistics from other cases that would lead
I
to.
like that.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it wasn't just kind of a pie in the sky idea. He had all the
Right.
statistics to back it up. And he was explaining to me that 92% of women who are murdered, the killer is someone that they know. Granted, we don't know that Nancy was murdered at this point, although sadly, it doesn't seem like she's probably alive at this point, but we don't know for sure. But so
Right.
92% of women who are murdered, the killer is someone they know. Is that something that you think the um the agents are taking into account, a statistic like that?
I don't know. I'm certainly not going to argue with a statistic. That sounds accurate. What I would want to discuss with the doctor is whether he considered this consistent with all other murders of women. I think if you did a sample test of those 92%, the number of women that would have been kidnapped for ransom would have been statistically insignificant. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure that that is and I'm not disagreeing with him. I would just have to be convinced that kidnapping was statistically legitimate.
Do you think that the FBI is going through, and the way he explained it, when he says someone that she knew, not like necessarily a close friend or family member, but someone she had come into contact with.
I
Um,
agree with him on that. I just don't think that I would have come to that conclusion with those statistics. I
yeah.
think that there are very good statistics to show that people who are kidnapped are frequently kidnapped by people who know them.
Yeah, and he actually brought that up too with abductions, which he said there's 350 abductions a year, normally children, but the far majority of those know their abductor. So that would also kind of match up with this theory that it's someone, and he said, it could be a contract, it could be anybody. It doesn't mean someone she knew well. So if you're
Complete
working
agreement.
the case, and we've heard that they're looking at contractors and construction worker, I mean, how far back do you think they go in terms of people she's come into contact with?
I'd probably go back at least 10 years. And this is going to sound horrible. And I almost hope Savannah doesn't hear this, but I would probably go back as far as the time when Savannah became prominent on media, because I think that this is likely somebody who believes that Savannah has uh, infinite money and can pay ransoms. And so based on that theory of mine, that's where I would want to start is when she became prominent on TV. And then you'd have to find out, then I'd start my work from there.
How do you do that? I mean, how do you go back that far?
It's difficult. You have to go through all sorts of records. You have to, I mean, it's basically a record search. And was there construction? I would go back through Nancy's bank account uh for all those years. Who did she pay? My guess is that she wrote checks. Um, she doesn't seem like the person who 10 years ago was probably, Venmoing people stuff. So I would go back through all of her records, financial records to begin with, and all of her social media, and go back for 10 years. I'd be at her banks and at her social media carriers trying to get her information, and then go from there. And what you're looking for is, say you're looking back 15 years. Um, so many people who she would have dealt with are either out, uh, don't live in the country anymore, don't live in the state, have passed away, all these things. Um, so the ones that are still around to investigate would be it wouldn't be that you'd have to say, oh, this guy's out of town, I've got to find him and talk to him. No, probably not. You'll just want to talk to the people who are still around and still in the Tucson area.
He also said he thinks that the suspect, and he used the word unafraid, was unafraid based on the video, the surveillance video from the front camera. That was the adjective he used to describe him. Do you agree?
I don't disagree. Uh, I have an immense amount of faith in profiling as a science, and I tend to listen to them. It's kind of like if you got. I don't try to land the airplane for my airline pilot. They're up there doing it, and they're better at that airplane than I would be. And in the same way, I don't consider myself a competent profiler, but I have trust in their work. So while he says they're unafraid, um, I don't disagree with that. So I would be looking at somebody who probably has a little bit of arrogance and overconfidence. I would think that if he's unafraid, which seems likely now, that he was overconfident, because there was enough there with just one or two other pieces of information, that it will eventually, you know, come back to haunt him. But and I've worked these cases, Brian. I had a case where a woman was murdered. The wrong man went to prison for 18 years, and she this guy was finally released, and the new detectives took the profiles from the crime 20 years before and found the guy.
Wow.
And he was right where the profiler said he was. Uh,
So when
Go
you're
ahead.
working a case, how does it work with the profilers? Like, do you have a meeting with them and they say, look, this is what we think, and then Like, how does it work behind the scenes?
What you tend to do, I mean, this is just very rough steps. In your normal case, it's all done by mail, Zoom, and stuff like this. But you fire off all the information you have on them, on the case. Then they'll go through it and send questions back to you. You answer the questions, send those back, and then they'll come up with what they think is a profile. If you're if you're fortunate, it's big enough case, the profilers will come to you, and that's so much easier. Uh, and then once they come up with their profile, then you sit down either by Zoom or across a table from them, and you go through all sorts of aspects, things that are just such incredible detail that it's just fascinating to me. And they, more often than not, they are absolutely correct.
So yeah, it is. It's a kind of a fascinating science.
Yes, it is. And as you go along in the case, you might ask questions like, oh, you said this person is of this age and this age. If you had to guess, would he be on the older end of the spectrum or the younger end? Just on, just give me a guess. Or this person, if he wasn't this age, we've got a suspect who's maybe, not in his 20s or 30s. We found somebody in his 50s. Is that completely out of the range of possibility? And they'll give you frank answers on that.
Back to what he was saying about believing that it was someone that Nancy knew in some capacity. At this point, it being, more than 2 months, they've obviously probably talked to the people in the inner circle. We've heard the sheriff say that he says that they cleared the family. I mean, at this point, do you think they've covered pretty much all the close relatives and friends?
Yeah, I mean, they've had all the time they need to do all that. I mean, it's not like days after the investigation. So, I think they probably run the usual suspects, the obvious suspects, things like that. That doesn't mean they've cleared everybody they've talked to. Uh, but it does mean that they've found nothing that they would bring to the table as a causal or as a culpable person.
Yeah. We also talked to Dr. Ann Burgess, and her big thing, huh, cute cat, by the way.
I'm sorry, she's
Let me
causing
see.
problems.
Oh my
I'm
gosh, she's so cute. Wow,
I'm,
beautiful
I'm sure
cat.
you can. What's that?
Beautiful cat.
Thank you. He's
He's
very
fine.
he was just asking for attention. He's just a red tabby, or an orange tabby.
Yeah, he's
Sorry
very.
about that.
How old is he?
Two.
Too. Yeah, he's
I
very
got
cute.
him and his sister as a bonded pair of kittens,
Very.
and they're just the best cats in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny. A random cat came to my. This has never happened before. A cat came to my front door today. I was just looking,
Wow.
and yeah, it was very cute. But then I found out it was one of my neighbors.
Yeah, they're
Um,
they're looking for food.
yeah, of course. Dr. Ann Burgess is another profiler we talked to. And this was interesting. Her big question was you have to ask who would benefit from this? Um, who benefits from her disappearing, from Nancy Guthrie disappearing? And she kept going back to that word, benefit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how I would work my cases frequently is I would actually plan the crime. How would I have done this? How would I have gotten Nancy out of her home? How would I have done stuff like this? And then, when you start saying how, uh, then it frequently comes to you, why would I do this? Why would I, what am I trying to do here? And if they're, and profilers are good at that. And I probably didn't think of that myself. I'm sure that I got that in some kind of training in the FBI, but it's been very helpful to me, and maybe it came from profilers. Uh, but yeah, she's asking the right questions from what I learned and what I did. She's um, you have to understand that, and I think that's what's so confusing to so many investigators and armchair investigators in social media is who would benefit from it, and why, if it was a kidnapping, um why didn't you negotiate better? Why did you sabotage your own investigation, or your own ransom possibilities by putting it in the media? That destroys it.
So from the beginning, there was something strange about that part to you.
Absolutely. If people want to get a message out, like the Unabomber or something like that, if they want to get a message out, yes, obviously involve the press. But if you want ransom, you don't want the public to know what's going on.
She also brought up retaliation or revenge is possible. And we've heard this before, like a grudge holder, someone who was trying to seek retaliation or revenge and doing that to, I guess, taking Nancy to do that.
Yes, and I think that is a very, very strong possibility now. Um, because what we have found with media personalities is there are people out there who are kind of stalkerish, and comes as no surprise to anybody, I'm sure. But and this is the profile I would want to look at. If the person was there as a fan of, or as an obsessed person about Nancy or Savannah, and something she had said, or something they perceive she said, then I would want to know what that profile is, because people like that really do an amazing amount of research and obsessive investigation into the subject of their obsession. So certainly the FBI by now has gone through all sorts of effort to find anybody who has attempted to communicate with Savannah, or with NBC about Savannah, or is online talking trash about Savannah. And it could be, I mean, I remember a case I worked where a DJ in Denver, Colorado, was murdered. And it turned out that he had had some guests on who were fighting anti-Semitic groups. And so it was an anti-Semitic group who killed him. And they were 3 states over. And so these are the things that make it really hard to line up a suspect. I still think it is likely a kidnapping, but I think if it's not, I would kind of think that once again, the profiler is right, that this is a person who had a grudge against Nancy, or against Savannah.
With the DJ, what did it take a long time to solve and find that group?
Um, no, not really. It was probably within 6 to 8 months they found
Okay.
it. And they weren't that smart. They left a lot of when you kill somebody and leave the body, you leave evidence.
Mm.
And the fact that they took Nancy, apparently alive, if she died somewhere else, and you're deprived of that evidence.
Yeah, you don't have that second crime scene.
No, no.
Yeah.
We
Do
will.
you?
They will.
Yeah, I hope so. Do you think that the FBI should release more information? Like, I know in other cases they've released more info about who they think the person could be, maybe some information from these profilers, or just a little bit more to kind of give people more focus.
I don't. And follow me on this. I mean, obviously, look what I'm doing. I'm talking to you. I'm a network news analyst for crime. I am on the media side of it now. So, and I certainly believe that media has a strong responsibility in holding people accountable, government, law enforcement, things like that. I think it's one of the noblest things that media does. At the same time, as a career FBI agent, I also believe that if law enforcement is acting legitimately, that um, uh, media should and historically generally has been respectful of the process. So my fear is my fear would be this. Number one, if you release details that only the FBI and the suspect would know, then you could never use those details in any kind of prosecution. Because so while it may find somebody or help find somebody, it makes it a lot less likely that they'd be prosecuted
Mm.
successfully. So there are two phases here, and you might help yourself here, but destroy yourself here. That's one thing. The other thing is, since I left the bureau, which hasn't been that long, uh, the entire social media world has changed or come to existence mostly. And so what happens when you release details, especially profiler details, which, as much as I believe in them and I believe they're scientific, and I followed them and they made cases for me, they are not 100%. And people could be in danger by other people saying, I've figured it out and they're going to pay for this. And you can make somebody's life miserable. So I think that's a new responsibility that the FBI has to deal with. So, no, I don't believe you should send more profiling information out there or more investigative details because it hurts the prosecution. It doesn't necessarily help. And it makes the assumption that the people out there have information that I mean, somebody has information out there already. You know, they know who did this, but I don't think the FBI is signed on to the philosophy that that the people of America are their best chance at solving this.
And there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about, Steve. There's this is new, which we confirmed, and other news outlets have also confirmed. There's a hair. So remember, they initially sent the DNA evidence to the Florida lab that the Pima County Sheriff works with. Now, so it's been there for months. Now they're sending a hair from that lab to the FBI lab in Quantico to do what
How
they're
did that
calling
hair get to the lab? I
in
mean,
in Florida.
yeah, the sheriff sent that hair to the
That's
lab in
right.
Florida.
Yes. Yeah. And this isn't new. Like they did this a long time ago. We just didn't know about it.
I was just unaware of it.
Yeah, yeah. We just found out about the hair. But what's new is that they're now sending the hair from the lab in Florida to the FBI for what we're being told is advanced testing.
Yeah.
What do you think that could mean? I mean, is that a good sign?
Yeah, it could be a good sign. I mean, it could be a very good sign. I think we discussed a while back. I would have just bundled up the entire bed sheet thing and tied it at the top, so everything that was in the bed would go to the lab, and they could spend a day looking for, 2 days looking for hair flakes or scalp things, anything, because you cannot walk across the room without leaving some type of evidence. And so if it, I suspect uh, she was helped out of bed simply because of her age. And if you do that and you lean over the bed, I mean, why do people wear hairnets in restaurants? Because we know hair falls in food. Hair would have fallen on that bed, very possibly, especially if there was any type of exertion. At the end of a day, you might have a hair or two on your shoulders. You lean over, it falls over. So I think there's so much uh, uh, potential evidence in those sheets and in those blankets. So I'm actually very encouraged by that. the thing with DNA from hair is that it depends on whether you get just the hair or you get the root, the follicle. If you get the follicle, then you get an immensely larger, I'm speaking in general terms, but you get a much larger DNA sample. If you get the hair alone, you have a very reduced and less useful, not unuseful, but less useful piece of evidence.
Yeah, and I actually interviewed a DNA expert the other day about that. I guess that the technology is changing so quickly with before it used to be if you didn't get the root, you were in
Yes,
trouble. Now I guess
right.
there's some new researchers that are really making progress with getting DNA off of the just the regular part of the hair. But she was explaining to me like if your hair is dyed, it's an issue. Like there's a lot of variables there that come into play. But it was just
Yes,
interesting to hear how quickly it's progressing. Before you were just basically screwed if you didn't have the root, and now I guess
right.
it's getting better. Something else I wanted to ask you that Dr. Burgess said was she believes that there was more than one person involved and that there may have been a boss, like like a boss and then some underlings. What are your
Okay.
thoughts on that?
I would have hired better people. But again, I'm not disagreeing with it. That's not my blink on the case. I just didn't see people. I mean, there are different relationships, when you get into hiring somebody to do something. Sometimes you hire them, train them, and equip them. Sometimes you just say, how much do you want? Um, so yeah, it could be very possible. And you asked about the process. Uh, if she said that across the table, I'd say, wow, that's fascinating. What makes you think that? Because whatever makes her think that um, is actionable evidence for us. I think so because he acted this way, or he did this in a way that didn't indicate that he had planned it, like he was following a script. Those things are always important. But the entire profile makes the investigation so much more effective. I remember one case where they said the person who did this crime lived within sight of this person's apartment window. And
Wow.
things like that, and they did, things like that, just you can imagine how invaluable they are. And so um, I would want, uh, I think what she's telling you is very accurate, and I would certainly not argue with any of it, but I would want to know the whys. The profile report on this thing isn't going to be a paragraph. This is going to be pages, and so I would want to know why she thought that.
You mentioned that the kidnapping, that there's weird things about the ransom note that don't make a lot of sense. Could the kidnapping be a distraction from something else? Like they just wanted to, I hate to talk about it like this, but like get rid of Nancy and then tried to make it look like a kidnapping. But I
Like
guess what would the reason for that be?
hypothetically, she witnessed a crime or something
Something like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the statistically, we have a very strong database on how that's done. It's basically walk in, shoot them, leave. That's how the La Cosa Nostra and the mafia and uh, crime syndicates and drug syndicates in Mexico. That's how they operate. Walk in, shoot, go. And if they stay for longer than that, it's only to torture the person or mutilate them to make a better, stronger message to anybody else who might be a witness. In this case, there was too much effort, in my opinion. There's no reason to make it look like a kidnapping because all you need is them dead and you not caught. And that's a whole bunch easier to do and not get caught than bringing the subject with you.
Hmm. Makes sense. Well, thank you, Steve, for your time, as
Thank
always.
you.
As always, I really appreciate Steve for taking the time to talk with me. I appreciate you guys for watching and subscribing. If anyone knows anything,